And on today's show, we are joined by Nick Streng of the Oregonian. We're just a couple guys who've been covering high school sports all around the state for over 5 years now, and we have some ideas on how the state can improve its high school sports scene. So let's get into it. Here's Nick. Joining me now from the Oregonian is Nick Streng, covers high school sports for Oregon's biggest paper. Nick, how's your summer treating you?
It's treating me all right. I've it's nice to be able to just relax a little bit over the summer. Um, the high school year is just chaos. You know it as well as I do. It's just a nonstop hurricane, and then you get a couple months to just chill and shoot. We're almost in August, and we got to start some football previews pretty soon.
Yeah, it's obviously it's the moratorium week, the dead week where nothing's happening. So basically everything starts up next week with camps, and then we're like a month away from being back at it. But it has been nice just kind of take things a little slower than you would from like August to June, basically.
Mhm.
All right. So today we're gonna do something a little different, a little more fun. We're gonna, we've been in the high school sports media for 5 years. This is gonna be my sixth year doing it. Nick, how long will this be for you?
I started covering sports in Eastern Oregon in 2016. So yeah, this will be my seventh year of covering high school sports.
All right, so we've been around the block a few times. We both have been start off in kind of smaller areas and kind of worked our way up into a bigger spots. So we've I feel like we have a good kind of sense of kind of the high school landscape, and these are just kind of fun ways, or ways that we think that high school sports could improve, or make things a little better. Some of these are very half-baked ideas and probably will end up being terrible ideas the more we talk them out, but just kind of a fun way to pass the time as we get ready for another high school sports season. So I'll kick us off with the first suggestion that I have was that teams should be allowed to petition to play up a level. There are teams that can petition play down a level, if they're kind of getting beat pretty badly in a certain sport, where you can be like, all right, we want to find a little more competitive balance. I think teams should have the chance to be like, hey, we think we're one of the top teams in the state, even though we may be a smaller school. We should be able to go play up a level.
I think that especially, I'm having flashbacks to last football season. Like, of course, Central Catholic was just an incredible football team, and they're going to be an incredible football team for at least the next couple of years, even without Riley Williams. But, Silverton and Thurston are great 5A football programs. Like, I think Silverton could have competed within the top four of 6A last year. They were really good. Marshfield in 4A was insane. Like, I've seen a lot of good 4A football. I've watched LeGrand enough times to know that what a good 4A football team looks like. And Marshfield was just dumb good. That team playing 4A looked like when I was at Pacific University having to watch Linfield come in and stomp us 70-0. The sports journal, we love to just fantasize about these kind of stupid games that are never going to happen. I would have loved to have seen Marshfield versus Silverton, Marshfield versus Tualatin. I think they could have tried them. Those games would have been incredible.
Yeah, I think Silverton and Tualatin both they had a pretty close game, or it was at one point before Tualatin pulled away, or at one point last year, if my memory's correct. This idea kind of came to me when I was in Newport. This would have been going into the 2018 season, or 2018-19 season, when they did a reclassification. And Woodburn, one of the big moves was they got moved down from 5A to 4A. Which for like all the other sports was a great move, because they like really struggled. I think in like the 5 previous years, they had one team like make the playoffs and like across the board, except for boys soccer.
I knew exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Like they were a great 5A team. They,
They
I
were back-to-back state champions.
yeah, and one of the soccer coaches here said, they ran into Woodburn all the time in the playoffs. So this is Summit, and there's like Woodburn was probably the best team in the state, and then they get dropped down to 4A, and at the time Newport they had just won back-to-back titles, and state they're in a conference with state, and all of a sudden Woodburn comes in, and I think everyone was upset about it, from the Newport coaches to all the coaches in the conference, the coaches at Woodburn. So it's like, why can't they just like petition to like, hey, we want to play up a level to where we feel like we're going to be most challenged and have a chance to like kind of prove how good we are.
It's funny how the world overlaps, because I remember having almost this exact conversation with Jaime Gonzalez, the Ontario boys soccer coach, because that year they were like, this is our year.
Mm-hmm.
If Woodburn wasn't here.
Yeah.
Because I think Woodburn whooped them like 3-0.
Yeah, I'd have to pull up the stats, but it was pretty drastic just how much better Woodburn was than the field. And then now, obviously this, applies to over here in Bend, because we have, the Bend schools were, 6A, now they're back down to 5A, and you have teams like, Summit Soccer and Summit, cross country, who, were in state title all 3 years for soccer, winning it last year, and then cross country winning, the girls cross country team winning it all 3 years. Yeah. So
I'm sure Ben's softball team will love another crack at a 6A.
Yeah, Ben softball, good call on that one. And then, but yeah, so it's just like, let's have teams petition to play up to better competition. That'd be one of my suggestions. Mm-hmm. What do you got?
When you told me to come up with 5 ideas, I specifically took out 2 that I knew were like the low hanging fruit, which is my 2 low hanging fruits are the shot clock and also name, image, and likeness. Those are things that we all know are coming.
Yeah.
So there's no real point in just in like saying like, oh, we should have a shot clock. Like in by the time Jazzy Davidson graduates from Clackamas, there's going to be a shot clock. Like we just know that. Everyone knows it's an inevitability. I also didn't want to make too many wrestling things.
I got a wrestling one.
I'm the big wrestling guy. I'm just going to throw out one. I want a dual meet championship.
Yes, I have that.
I desperately want, and not only for I put down for wrestling and also for sports like tennis, where you have team competition for an individual sport.
Here's what I have. Add team state tournament for wrestling and tennis.
Yep, that's my number one. I old wrestling people know, like, wrestling nowadays is all about tournaments, because there's a national rule for the number of matches you can have in a season, or not number of matches, number of events. Mm-hmm. So if I have a dual meet on a Friday, Newburgh versus Mountain View, if they duel on a Friday, that would be really fun to watch. But your kid's going to get one match.
Yeah.
Now instead, we can have a tournament, and your kid is guaranteed at least 2 matches. Economically, it makes more sense to have tournaments. But tournaments are, as someone who wrestled for most of his life, tournaments are awful to sit through from beginning to end.
Yeah.
You can't do it. It's 2 days, 12 hours a day. You can't do it. You show for the finals. That's the only way to watch them. Or the show for the semifinals. It's the only way to watch them. But a dual meet, like a really good wrestling dual meet, is just electric.
Yeah, they're awesome.
It's, when you have good matchups. I remember being in Eastern Oregon watching Nissa versus Fruitland. You're talking about a 3A powerhouse in Idaho versus a 3A powerhouse in Oregon. Evenly numbered, schools of similar size. Mm-hmm. These are both sending kids to college. They got a kid. Fruitland had a kid that went to Cornell. Nissa had a kid that went to Stanford. Like that dual meet was just incredible. Like, if you had Newburgh versus Crescent Valley in the duel at Newburgh and at Crescent Valley, away and away, that would fill the gym. But coaches really shy away from dual meets now because of the number of events that you can have. I think a dual meet championship would be just incredible to watch.
Yeah, and the thing with that, they already kind of have the infrastructure kind of set up. The
Mhm.
Oregon Classic they have out here,
Yeah.
it draws the best teams,
Yep.
and from all levels, and it's like the winner of that usually has a really good shot at winning the state title. They're usually right in contention, and so I think that could be an easy fix. I know JD Alley's been advocating that for a while, to without much success lately. But I don't know. I agree with you. I think dual meets that there are just they're just way more fun than like to even just to cover and just watching, just because you just have this element where it's like, all right, you can lose, but if you just like don't get pinned, or you're able to like kind of keep
Mhm.
it close, like you can really like help your team in a way that you really can in a tournament.
You can watch a kid at heavyweight who's not very good grind out a loss by 3 points and be the hero of the team.
Yeah.
It's very cool how the math of dual meets works like that.
So I this is a quick little sidebar. Like when you were wrestling in high school, what was kind of like the ratio to like tournaments to dual meets?
We had we used to do like 3 big tournaments a year,
Mm-hmm.
not including the district or the state championship, um, and they were all preseason.
Mm-hmm.
Once the season started, it was all dual meets, but it was like the whole district. Like, I mean, we were in Honolulu, so everyone's kind of close.
Mm-hmm.
So like all the schools from the ILH, the Interscholastic League of Honolulu, we would meet at one location. It'd be like Kamehameha School or St. Louis School, and you would have like three dual meets in a night.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how they would have more matches for you.
Okay. Yeah, because in my brief and unsuccessful wrestling career, it was just mostly all dual meets, and
Yeah.
that was kind of one of the. I was kind of surprised once I got back into covering high school sports, just how tournament heavy wrestling had become. Um, and it sounds like, and we can kind of transition into tennis. It sounds like tennis. There's the Oregon tennis reporting. I'm sure you follow
Mm-hmm.
them on Twitter. The Oregon high school tennis scoop. They had this huge thread yesterday, just like how like, hey, we need. He's been at or they've been advocating for, we need a state tournament for teams, and I think I agree. And I one of the telling things is one of the things he said was that over 60% of football players get to experience playoff football and postseason football when it's a much smaller number. He has 13% of tennis players, or of 6A tennis players. So
Wow.
I think that right there is enough of a reason to be like, hey, maybe we should look at a team format.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know a ton about tennis to wonder why it isn't that way, or why they aren't doing it that way. But it seems like it could be done. I don't know.
Yeah, and the OSA, I'm curious to see if any 6A programs try to pilot at least a district league champion, like team championship like that,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the only way that's going to happen. And that's what they said last year anyway, was someone needs to start a pilot for a district version and just you know see what the gate looks like. That's the hard truth of working with the OSA is, what's the gate going to look like?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that that could improve things is having people who are like really like heavily like invested in the sport, or just like been coaching or whatnot, be like on these you know individual sport committees, and be like, hey, here's how we can make these sports better.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so here's my second I'd like to see an all classification basketball tournament where you take the state championships from all six of the classifications and you just have one tournament. I know it would be, we'd probably know who would win most of the time, but I would love to see just like one of these like 2A teams, just like take it to a 5A team, just like, or just like give it what they have. Cause like, when I first started, I was covered the Toledo basketball team that, you know, they won, you know, state tournament. And it's like, man, these guys can really play. And I obviously, you know, they're, you know, a little like size wise, they're a lot smaller than like the teams that, you know, covered now, but like they could really shoot. And it's like, man, could they just like have a game where they hit like 15 threes and just like really just fluster like one of these, you know, 5 or 6A teams. So anyway,
You know, like basketball is such a funny sport because it's like skills wise, yeah, like the 6A kids are generally better. But like, you know, I've been around some of the smallest schools in the state. You know, I've seen Jordan Valley has a good basketball program. Crane has a great 1A basketball program. I've seen kids at Jordan Valley who could beat the crap out of 4A kids
yeah.
in basketball. Just some of the toughest, you know, horse wrangling kids that, you know, show up to practice with scuffed boots. They're tough kids, and they will surprise you every so often.
Yeah, even if it's just like the initial just like shock factor of just like, all right, this team just came out and hit like 4 threes on us, and we have to sell that. Like it'd be similar to it's like March Madness tournament. You have these, you know, teams that probably have like no business. Like who was it? Was it St. Peter's this year that, you know, won a couple games that just like it happens. So I don't know. I think it'd be just a fun. It could just be just like a weekend.
If they could figure out like a Christmas tournament,
Yeah.
show up and we'll give you the gym. We'll give you a game.
Yeah. And you know what, the scores would probably be totally lopsided, but I think the like, especially like if a 3 or 4A team would be matched up, or even like, man, I think like those Toledo teams could have hung with some 4A teams. And like even like Western Christian, like they're always really good. Like Cascade Christian had like Ben Greggs, like they had some players. It might be a 6A team winning it year after year after year, but hey, if you got that one time where a 2A team stuns someone, it'd be worth it.
We still have Les Schwab, the Les Schwab Invitational every year, and it's usually some out of state team kicking the crap out of an Oregon team in the finals anyway.
Yeah,
nobody was coming within 30 points of Link Academy. So
yeah. All right, what's your next one, Nick?
I'm gonna skip a wrestling one. I have one on here that I really wanted to dig in here.
Okay.
Was OSAA, for the love of God, add the mile to track field.
Add the mile to track and field. Okay.
I know the 1500 is almost the same, but it's not. And if you've been to track and field events in the state where they have the mile, it's just different. And it's an Oregon thing, right? This is a Hayward Field, Steve Prefontaine, just legacy thing. And like I remember going to the Jesuit Twilight Relays, and at the Twilight Relays they had the elite events. At the main event of the night was the elite events, and they had the, you know, obviously the girls sprints, the boys sprints, and then they had the distance runners, because those are some of the premier athletes in the state right now, is the sprinters, and we had a very good field of distance runners. And Caleb Lakeman from Tualatin, he went into the mile and broke his dad's record from like the 70s in the mile, and you could see it on his face, like that meant the world to him, because it's just the Oregon legacy thing, right? That people love running the mile because it's, you know, kids in the state grow up watching Steve Free fame tapes,
Mhm.
getting the stop free shirt. They go to Hayward to watch events, and they get the stop free shirt, and they watch his races, and they still think he's going to win at the dang Olympics, but he burns out in the last 100. You know, I just think I think that the OSA's got to do it, man. It's a special Oregon thing.
Do other states all have
I don't.
I don't know enough about track. Is that just kind of is 1500 pretty standard, or is it?
I think that is the standard. I think that track and field is like there's differences from state to state. Like Idaho doesn't have the javelin,
Mhm.
but I'm pretty sure it's standard at 1500.
Yeah, I I have no pushback against that because what is it? It's just 100 more meters. Might as well just make it a mile. Nice round number, like
Mm-hmm.
1500. That's like way more syllables you have to say. It's like you don't have to do any of the conversions to be like, all right, so what would this be in a mile time? Yeah, let's get a mile. This is kind of another basketball one, but I am intrigued by the one venue for like all the basketball tournaments. I don't know. I know Washington does something similar. I'm just very intrigued by it.
Idaho does Idaho does separate venues for all five classifications, but then the championship games for all five classifications are held at the Fort Idaho Center.
Okay,
And like the consolation games are spread out, but the championship games are here.
interesting. Because yeah, I let's see. I haven't been to the one or 3A tournaments
Mm-hmm.
in my time. Um, but yeah, Pendleton was pretty cool. 4A at Forest Grove was
Forest Grove has a nice gym, but
it's a nice gym, but it's like you're going to Forest Grove to play in a high school gym, and then obviously 5A 6A or at Gill and uh,
yeah.
at University of Portland. Those are awesome venues, but I'm just I don't even know where it'd be a good place to even hold it. But I just think just like one venue where it could be just like a weekend of just like or like a week of just like all basketball, just bringing everyone from around the state. Now that I'm talking this out, I actually have like it's like wrestling, but I actually kind of prefer like the different venues for wrestling. So
I mean, that's part of one thing that I had on here was just like have championship games at big venues.
mhm,
And I know this, comes down to money, financial wise, it's not that feasible.
mhm.
But yeah, like you said, to play your whole season, and then like the state championship game is held at Baker City or in Baker City. Like, no hate to Bill Gonzalez in Baker City, but um, it's not it's not great. You know, it's to play your state championship game in a 4A gym is not the same. I remember getting to play um, for me in high school. I got to play at Aloha Stadium.
Mhm.
It was like, well, like it's huge in there. And even I was in Division 2 football, and you're playing in the stadium, and no one really cares about Division 2 back then. But during the game, the Division 1 fans start showing up because they got to get good seats. So
Mhm.
around halftime, the stadium starts filling up for people who don't know you, but they're like, I'm here, I'm going to cheer anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's something that you would probably see. It's like all right, you have these probably these lower levels all set in. You have the guys filtering from the biggest schools, and they just kind of just they're basketball fans. They're gonna just kind of pick sides, and it just kind of just makes the can make something
The
cool.
Yeah, if they could do something like that in Portland, people who like basketball will just be there all day,
Yeah,
and it would be quite a lot of them.
yeah. There's a basketball coach that came down from Washington to coach down in this area, and we were talking before playoffs, and he was just like, man, like all my friends are up at the state tournament. I'm just so jealous, and it's just like they just have like courts after courts just lined up, and just people just move from game to game. It's like that'd be pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
But for wrestling, I guess I liked I actually kind of like the separate venues.
I I don't hate the separate venues. I know that the smaller schools don't like having to travel to Portland multiple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Like Ontario, I know that every few years they have to travel across the state for districts and then travel back to Portland for state, and it's like it's so much travel in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Luke Cleaver from NISA has like an entire 64-page slideshow for the OSA about like how he would host this 3A state championships at NISA and run it better. Same, he's just like JD Alley, but I can tell you that going to the girls state championship last year was like it was wild that like you had a girl like Destiny Rodriguez, who's one of the top 20 wrestlers in the country in high school,
Mm-hmm.
wrestling for the state championship at Culver High School.
Yeah.
Like that was it just completely blew my mind how small the venue was for some of the best. Like I think Oregon last year had maybe like 6 or 7 of the like really good like elite level girls wrestlers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I because yeah, there's the girls were in Culver, so was the 2A, and then like 5A was in Redmond, and the
Mm-hmm.
3A was in La Pine, which was easy for me because it was just like all within like an hour of each other.
Right.
But I don't know, I kind of just like the kind of the more intimate kind of feel to where it was you got to those championships rounds, and it was they turned on the lights, like all the lights were turned off. They're just wrestling under the single light. And I was like, it's really cool. It's not like Lapine had like these really like kind of elaborate like entrances set up. It was just something that they couldn't do at a normal at what would have been the normal state tournaments kind of before
Yeah.
2020.
For what it's worth, they are splitting them up next year, starting next year. I think 5A and 6A are together, and then 4A, 3A, 2A, and 1A are at a separate venue.
All right, Nick, do you got one more? We'll try to keep these ones quick and get you out of here.
Oof. I think my last one is going to be. I'm not going to go with the other wrestling one. That's a boring one to end on. I'm going to go with. We just need to rip the band-aid off and invest in esports.
Invest in esports.
I'm not an esports guy. I don't watch competitive video games,
Mm-hmm.
but I spoke years ago. Like I was gonna write a story. Oh, I was setting the story up in like February 2020, which
Mm-hmm.
is why it never happened. Um, with Ryan Hawkins, who used to be the assistant superintendent at NISA school district, and he was like really like getting ready to start esports club at NISA High
Mm-hmm.
School, and I was like, okay, that's weird. And he was like, no, we're trying to make this a legitimate thing on par with any other activity at the school. Like he was like, we want NISA's esports to be like NISA wrestling, is what he was telling me. And ultimately it comes down like, you know, we can sit here and talk all day about, you know, Riley Williams, Crew Newman. You know, for you have the Summit basketball guys who are all really great. But at the end of the day, high school sports is about getting kids out and doing something.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of kids need something to do after school. A lot of kids need a reason to stay academically eligible. And that's what he was telling me was like, these kids are all going home and playing Fortnite anyway. You might as well. We have every kid has a computer in this dang school.
Yeah.
We might as well stick them in a room and have them play Fortnite here. And if their grades aren't good, they can't do it, right?
Yeah.
Like give them a reason to put a NISA jersey on. Give them a reason to get good grades. Give them a reason to, you know, get off the couch. It's not going to hurt anybody.
Yeah.
Let's just do it.
No, that is I hadn't even thought of the esports angle, but it's like they all do it. Like everyone just like plays video games now, and I think that there's a
Mm-hmm.
misunderstand or just a unawareness of just like how popular
Yeah.
like video games is, and just like how good people like can get at it, and the benefits of being really good at a video game.
When it was explained to me as a let's make this into a school activity to give them some sort of reason to be a part of it, then I was like fully on board. Let's
Yeah.
do it. Like I don't like me personally, whatever. Like esports are just like it exists. I've never watched the Pokemon World Championships. I know it exists. I've never watched it,
Mm-hmm.
but like if some kid from Cleveland High School is really good at that and needs a reason to be part of some kind of academic or some sort of extracurricular at school, like I'm all in for it because they've already got computers for all the kids.
Mm-hmm.
I think the infrastructure is already there.
Yeah. No, I'm on board. I'm on board. I'm terrible at video games, but I'm on board. I could have used a little coaching or a little training. All right, Nick. I think that is all the time I got. Um, got any hot takes for this upcoming sports season?
No, I'm not as plugged in on the fall, so because I started at the end of the fall season last
Okay.
year. Um, so it's going to be a complete culture shock again for me. I'm super stoked for basketball this year. 6A girls basketball is going to be an absolute slugfest because
Yeah.
the entire all-state team is back except for like one girl from Lakeview or Lake Ridge.
Mhm.
Um, and 6A boys basketball was a complete just carousel of coaches. The Tualatin's coach left, West Lynn's coach left, Grant's coach went to West Lynn, Cleveland's coach went to Grant. It's everyone is everywhere.
Yeah.
I know I'm gonna go to a game and be like, that kid is at that school now. What the heck? It's gonna be great. I'm excited to get back into it.
Yeah. I'm kind of at this point where it's like, all right, it's time to just kind of look forward to the next year now. Cause like I was just like for so long, just like keep like, oh man, like last year it was so fun, just like have sports back. I just want to keep just like doing stuff with like last year's, teams and whatnot.
Mhm.
And but now it's like, all right, time to look forward to what's ahead.
I will say, like, I remember talking with Peter Weber from the OSA a few weeks ago and just being like, it didn't really occur to me until recently that outside of a couple weeks in basketball, we had a pretty like COVID didn't destroy anything this year.
Yeah.
It slowed down the metro area for a couple weeks in basketball, but that was kind of it. Like spring was pretty fine.
Yeah.
Nothing major happened. So, knocking on wood that we're seeing the tail end of this.
Yeah. No, like that's like this time last year, like the very first day of like practices, there was a COVID outbreak on one of the football teams here that is just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, here we go again. But like I said, it was very minimal. Like players would miss times or like they're like might cancel a game or two, but for the most part, it was went pretty smoothly, and hopefully we'll have another smooth one coming up.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Nick. Hey, appreciate you joining me, man.
Yeah, thanks so much, Brian.